Well, Director and Chief Economist at Econometrix ZA, Dr. Azar Jammine, joins us now. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, Azar. I can see because of your warm clothes that you're not going to Davos this year.
I wish I did, but unfortunately I recognize that Davos is a business, and unless you work for a big business, it's quite difficult to afford to go to Davos.
All right, so let's talk about Team South Africa's mission. Is it something that we must do? They're talking about 52 heads of state, captains of industry from all over the world. Is it one of those events you've just got to go to?
Unfortunately, I mentioned Davos is a business, and it's a very good business because it captures its clients in a way that they cannot actually leave it out. To do so and not to be present creates a bad impression that in itself can be negative for investor perceptions. And so the South African government is compelled to attend Davos, whether it's kicking or screaming, and has to basically afford very expensive flights, accommodation, etc. for its delegation. Basically, that delegation has to try and convey a positive message to potential investors. And if it weren't there, unfortunately, it would act in terms of detracting investment even still more than would otherwise have been the case.
Do deals actually get done there, or is it more about networking and then follow up afterwards?
I think it's far more about networking and follow up. It's also kind of an environment in which people like to tick off and actually build up points for having seen and spoken to this person and that person, the other, and rather than actually creating massive deals. Having said that, it's important to show the kind of influence that it has. Apparently, Davos was a very important experience for President Nelson Mandela when he first ascended to the presidency, or even prior to ascending to the presidency of South Africa, because he was told in no uncertain terms what the investor community was looking from the ANC when it came into power. And that almost compelled the ANC to adopt a capitalist approach, even though its membership was probably geared the other way.
All right, so great opportunity to sell the country, but also, I guess, a great opportunity for potential investors to ask some tough questions. And this is probably what, if the president actually makes it over there, but our delegation in particular is going to have to field some tough questions, one being energy supply.
Undoubtedly, energy supply is going to be number one on the list, but there are other issues that he will be questioned upon. The potential grey listing of South Africa for not doing enough to stall money laundering, and also the question of high unemployment. Why is South Africa, with a surplus of labor, ending up employing fewer and fewer people relative to the whatever economic growth is going on? And he will have to answer for that.
What story can we say? I mean, you know, we certainly have our energy challenges, but NERSA has just granted Eskom a tariff hike. Is that good or bad? Because it could help Eskom, but at the same time, it will cost business.
We know that one of the problems at Eskom over the last 25 years or so has been the fact that the utility has not received cost-reflective tariffs for the electricity it has supplied. The legacy of that phenomenon goes back to even the apartheid era, when we created a huge amount of new power stations that are now aging and breaking down, but at that time were very new and able to generate a lot of electricity, but at a time when the South African economy during its final decade of apartheid wasn't growing at all. And so the authorities at the time decided that the best thing to do under such circumstances was to market South Africa as the cheapest source of electricity in the world. And we got a few big projects such as Alusaf, Columbus Steel, Hillside Aluminium and the like on the back of very cheap electricity. But what was not recognized is that we needed higher electricity tariffs to build up the reserves with which to fund new power stations. When we woke up to the fact that we were running out of power because the economy is starting to do better in the first decade of the 21st century, we suddenly started panicking and went hell for leather to try and build power stations as rapidly as possible, incurring huge design errors and unable to afford to pay for those power stations because electricity tariffs were far too low. And ever since then, we've been trying to play catch up with those tariffs, but consumers are now resisting those high tariffs. And of course, you've got intermediaries who pass on those electricity tariffs, such as municipalities, that are also have to be taken into the mix.
Is there anything that we can sell to the international community that we can say, this is what we've got, this is what we do well?
I would love to see the government trying to sell the fact that it has now freed up theoretically and officially the electricity sector to private investors to start generating electricity. But we also know that there are those within the ruling party who are dragging their feet to actually facilitate such a process. The regulatory nightmare involved in trying to, as a private investor, to try and start building new electricity generating capacity is mind-boggling. And as a result, we are stalling in the very area where we could be making a lot of progress to resolve the problem. So yes, granting a big tariff increase to Eskom is trying to resolve the problem one step at a time, but it is quite late to do so.
All right, so back at home, as we reflect on some of these issues, where are we in terms of energy is one of them, and the economy is going to be affected by that. But what else can we fix? We've got a budget coming up shortly. Yeah, carry on.
There are some very important aspects that the government can address in trying to convey a positive message. The first is progress has been made in the fight against corruption, albeit far too slowly for many people's likes. Secondly, the government needs to keep emphasizing that our institutions, some key institutions, are extremely sound and have been improved in recent years, including the National Prosecuting Authority, State Security, the South African Revenue Services, and the National Treasury itself, that were previously emaciated by the preceding regime under President Zuma, who tried to break down those institutions in order to enrich some of the people who were well connected to the leaders at the time. All that is very positive news for the future. And I think also from a fiscal discipline point of view, we have also contained government spending very well in the last couple of years under the leadership of Enoch Godongwana, even though such austerity is seemingly opposed by almost half the ANC itself. But it does carry a positive message for foreign investors that we are not going down the road of many other emerging markets in terms of completely succumbing to populist policies. The Reserve Bank stands firm as well with extremely tight monetary policy, allowing our inflation rate to be far lower than that of most other countries, and our interest rates need not carry on rising unduly as a consequence.
Legal issues to one side, how important is it for the president to be there himself personally as the team leader for Team South Africa?
I think it is extremely important for President Ramaphosa to be there personally. He is held in high esteem internationally. He will also need to try and answer to some questions that will be posed to him about Phala Phala. But I think it's necessary for him to be open about it and to defend himself in that regard, to endorse the confidence that international investors have in him still further. I think it's absolutely vital. And also, there will be many questions surrounding who are likely to be the new leaders to assist him in what is likely to be a new set of cabinet ministers in the not too distant future. And they need to also to be presenting themselves to try and provide more confidence in the longer term future. One has to just conclude by saying that, South Africa has huge problems, but it is not the only economy and country that has such problems. And we always have to try and present a positive picture to convey the message that the country is not collapsing entirely, as some people are wont to suggest.
Dr. Azar Jammine, always great talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us.
Pleasure.
Thank you. All right, that's Director and Chief Economist at Econometrix ZA, Dr. Azar Jammine, speaking to us about Team South Africa's pending journey to WEF, the World Economic Forum, taking place in Davos in Switzerland. The president should be there, but he's got these legal challenges that he has to overcome. And he's an important ambassador for us to get some things done out there.